Hi everybody and welcome back to My Simple Life. Today we have my recovery video part 2. So today I'm going to talk to you all about the emotions that I went through and am still currently going through with my injury. With this, I'm actually going to be using the model of the 6 stages of grief to kind of outline where I'm at and kind of where I'm going with my emotions. Okay, so the very first stage of grief is denial, and that's completely what I felt. As I said in my previous video, I was completely in denial when the surgeon told me that my fingers were going to be amputated. I didn't believe him. I didn't want to, and I was just sort of shaking my head and saying, check again, you know, there's got to be something wrong. There has to be a way to fix this. And you know, I don't think I still really fully grasped it once I'd accepted that there was no going back from that. My friends came over pretty quickly after my accident, and I put on a pretty brave face for them. I tend to sort of try and laugh my pain away. I'm not the greatest at expressing how I feel, and so I'll sort of joke and kind of make light of a situation in order to sort of express how I'm doing. And so that's kind of what I did. I joked and I basically refused to acknowledge what was actually happening and what I was feeling. I wasn't really ready to feel it. However, I did break down to my boyfriend later on. Once my friends were gone and my family was gone and it was just me and him, I broke down a lot. I had a lot of breakdowns and panic attacks and full-on cry sessions, and he held me through each and every one of them. He's honestly been an amazing source of strength for me throughout this whole journey. Okay, so the second stage of grief, anger and bargaining. I was really angry, really angry once I'd sort of fully comprehended that this was going to be my new way of life. I was really angry with myself for the most part. You know, I don't fault the company for it. I know that, you know, we make our own decisions, we make our own choices. What I'm angry about is that I put so much into a part-time job, in the sense that I've now lost my fingers and won't ever gain them back, and that was just for a part-time job. And I really want to stress to everybody that it is not worth it to put yourself in danger and to ignore safety concerns and to ignore the training that's provided. So, time for the third emotion, that is depression. Third stage of grief, and this one I found was the worst. I suffered really bad, and I'm still suffering really bad from depression from the accident. Once the accident happened, I sort of folded in on myself. I didn't want to sort of put my hand in danger. I didn't want to put myself in danger, and I just kind of huddled up. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't feel like going out or doing anything. I just kind of felt like staying in bed and sleeping all day and crying all day. I had major panic attacks and major breakdowns over how this is my new way of life and sort of trying to accept that. I found that once my friends had left, I felt sort of numb. I felt very empty. And I'm still struggling with that today. One problem is the fact that this has taken me sort of from my life as I knew. I identified very strongly as a student and a hard worker, and you know, I was always busy. I love being busy. I love having plans and responsibilities and to-dos. I love tasks, and all of a sudden I had this massive amount of free time in front of me. And it's awful it felt honestly soul crushing, because you want nothing more than to go back to life like it was. You want nothing more than to go back to school and to go back to work and to just kind of forget all of this nightmare had even occurred. And every time I woke up, it was just the same day. I found that it got to the point that I was just sleeping in as late as I could, because that meant less hours than the day for me to be awake. And I would just hang out all day and hang out with my dog. I couldn't even take him for walks because my hand, it's a left holding leash, and there's no way, he's way too strong for me. And so we would just hang out all day, and I found I would watch TV all day, I would read, or I would try and read, but I found that my concentration level had suddenly gone to zero. All of a sudden, I couldn't seem to concentrate on stories and events and news, even Netflix. I couldn't really follow any sort of long storyline. I ended up watching reruns of The Office because that was sort of mind-numbing and I didn't have to really pay attention. Because I just found that my concentration level had gone. I couldn't seem to focus on anything. I couldn't really get past this sort of big hole of darkness I found myself in. And during this time, I struggled a lot with not wanting to be here anymore. I struggled with wondering if it was worth it to even go through this rehab, to deal with all the pain and the hard parts, because it just felt like there was more hard parts ahead. It didn't feel like there was any sort of easiness to this. It just seemed the same hard, frustrating parts. And during this time, I was going to therapy, and this was when my therapist explained that I sort of do this thing called minimizing. And that's where I found that I feel really, really hard on myself, or I sort of take things really hard on myself when it comes to my emotions and my feelings. I struggle a lot with allowing myself to even feel this way, because I'm sorry, I lost fingers. I didn't lose an arm or a leg or something sort of so pivotal to you. But at the same time, I did. I did lose something, and that's not a small thing. That's not something that you should just sort of brush off. But I struggled a lot with sort of grasping that my trauma is just as hard as someone else's trauma, and that doesn't make my trauma any less than anyone else's. At this point, because I was in therapy, after 5 therapy sessions, you are meant to go in for a psych eval. This is done with everybody because they just need to double check and actually get a set diagnosis for you, and that way they can sort of streamline you towards the best therapy that is needed for your specific case. So I actually was put in for a request for a psych eval back in December, and I only got that done a couple weeks ago. And I've gotten the results of them, and I've been diagnosed with severe PTSD and major depressive disorder since the accident. I am on medications for these, and I am going through therapy for this. It's not something I have an easy time talking about, as you can probably tell, but I do feel that it is important to kind of explain my diagnosis and to tell you that this does happen and that these feelings are valid. Okay, so now on to stage 4 of the grief model. The reason I have stayed so far or so long in the depression stage of this model is because I'm still in that stage. I'm still going through the depression phase. I'm not fully out of it. I am really, really trying to pick myself out of there. But I'm just trying to take every day as it comes right now. Okay, so the fourth model is the upward turn. This is where you find yourself sort of pushing forward. And this is when you have to remember that moving forward is not going to be linear. So you're going to have days where you feel frustrated and angry that, I can't pick even a mug up with my left hand. But the other day I was able to squeeze a ball for the first time with my left hand. And though that may not seem like much to someone, to me that was a really, really big win. And so it's important to sort of celebrate these small wins for yourself, and to not minimize the accomplishments that you make. I found I still struggle with my capabilities. I still struggle with pushing myself. In physio, we have this talk of the push-pull, where you don't want to push too far that you're just in so much pain and you just have to pull away for the rest of the day. But you don't want to not push too far and sort of stay in that backwards cycle of not moving forward. So physio is sort of where I feel I'm moving forward the most. I will say, in terms of my mental state, I'm not necessarily moving as forward as I'd like to hope I was. Okay, so the fifth grief model, that is reconstruction and working through. So this is acknowledging that you can't go back to your old life. And again, this is something I am still going through and still working through. But this is to acknowledge that, there's going to be a new way of life. It's understanding that you're no longer going to be who you were, and you're going to be a new person because of the experience that has occurred. And that's okay. That's normal. That's a sense of growing and change. That's what we need in our lives. That's how we all move forward and move ahead. And the last stage of the grief model, and the best stage of the grief model, is acceptance and hope. This is sort of finding the light in the proverbial tunnel. This is pushing yourself out of that dark place and sort of pulling yourself out to the light. I'm not necessarily there yet. I struggle every day trying to find the light. But I find it some days. Some days I do, and some days I don't. And that is okay. I'm still healing. It's only been 3 months. I'm due for another surgery in about 2 weeks. And I know that that's going to bring about new emotions, because it's going to sort of set me back a little bit in terms of my healing and recovery. But it is going to hopefully be beneficial to me in the future. Okay. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I know that this one was a little bit of a hard one today. So I just want to thank you guys for sticking through and staying with me through all of this. I'm sending you all love and light. Bye-bye.